Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, everybody, welcome to Sunday Live Chat. Exciting today, special guest again, the one, the only, Douglas McCarthy. Hi, Douglas.
Hello, Kevin.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been a while.
It has. I think I just saw you scooting down Riverside in the bug.
What?
Yeah, I think you were just getting some gas like at Riverside and Fletcher. There's that mobile or whatever on the corner there. But I think I was coming in or turning the corner as you were turning in or going away, but I recognized it and you.
Oh, yeah, no, the bug. I think Rihanna said something. I think she said, was that Douglas? And I said, I didn't see. So yeah, you've got a good eye. But before that, it has been a while. How are you doing? I mean, it's good to see you. Look fantastic.
Thank you.
What's going on?
All is good. Yeah, I had a pretty terrible year. Well, kind of at midsummer, things started to go a bit awry with my health. So that was a little bit of a shock, literally, to the system. But managed to scamper back to some good medical care back here in LA. It ain't cheap, but they know what they're doing, as you're well aware. Yeah, they fixed me up good. So I missed a few shows at the end of the European leg, but then bounced right back in to play with Trent in Cleveland with Al. And then we did some stuff. There they are. The exact same people I just said.
How was it? How was it like? This whole experience was like it looked like it was a monumental occasion.
It was pretty mega. I mean, backstage was fairly hilarious. Like the litany of artists, because the train got everyone that had ever played back there. So it's a lot of familiar faces. Very nice to see everyone. Everyone's actually in great health, which is hilarious. It was fun. Shows were great. I mean, I gotta say, everyone sounded great, but Ministry were just awesome.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, not to put anyone else down, including us, but it was just still like, hell yeah.
But you killed it. You killed it as well upon your return, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I was watching some of the videos that you could check out, and was that? I mean, with your absence, like Bond has really filled in like more than anybody could probably have expected. And
that guy's got a lot of energy. He's small. He's small, but he's great.
Awesome, though.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of support, obviously, and that's you know how these things go. Years and years of being with someone, you end up being. It's more sibling relationship than almost any. I mean, I say this not in the biblical way. I've been with Vaughn for longer than any girlfriend, wife I've ever had.
It's been said to me before.
And they really stuck by me. And David Gooday obviously was there as well from the original lineup.
That's awesome. I love him.
Yeah, that guy. You got to set aside at least a couple of hours to hear what he's got to say.
What a presence.
Yeah, so everybody really, really dug deep, and those guys took it on their shoulders. The crew were all awesome. And meanwhile, I was just, going through procedures and then convalescing back here. And it was, like everyone in that position, I just wanted to get straight back out. And everyone to do with the Nitzer Ebb setup very gently, but firmly said, you don't need to do that yet. you need the rest, and then we're gonna have really good times again on stage. But you need to get well and get out there. Yeah, and then we played, as you say, played with Front, which is awesome. Love seeing those guys.
Killing it again.
Yeah, those guys. I mean, you know,
All of you. What the combination that you guys have all, like, you know. I love that you're all regroup with David Good Day, and it just is, and just the energy that's bringing back to the events. It's just killer.
Yeah, and we're going to go out again. Like we were talking about it before COVID hit, about doing an anniversary type tour for both bands with Front 242, and then everything got screwed up. You know, obviously it shut down, specifically in Europe. So we're gonna do I think it's 6 shows in January, called Join the Forces tour. I don't know, something that Patrick came up with. I can't remember. Something like that. I'm always terrible at remembering, you know, song titles.
Join the Forces. That sounds all right.
That's good. No, it's a good one. Yeah. So we're gonna be in Europe January, and we're looking forward to that. I mean, Jean-Luc had his own health issues as well, and I don't know, it feels good, you know.
Oh man,
we're all fighters.
Both of you guys killed it. Like, you know, I've got to say, the stage presence that you guys possess, it's like, and just your sound. Like, I thought Bond did a great job, but man, when you returned, it was like, oh shit.
Right.
Like, I just could feel that your reinvigoration. So here's the Join the Forces tour 2023.
There he goes.
There we go. So this is in January already. Pretty soon.
Yeah. So we're just we're prepping, doing some reworking of tracks, like going over some of the remixes that were done back in the day of certain songs, and kind of using a nod to them to keep things lively for us as well as the audience, you know, and then include a different set because we're both bands are playing. It'll be a slightly shorter set than people are used to. I mean, not really short. It's still going to be well over an hour.
Yeah.
Each band, but it means that we've got an opportunity to kind of like rotate songs, especially on a short run like that. We can rotate songs and try things out as we go. It's a kind of nice pace.
It's always good to share a bill with another band, like on that level, where it's like, you know, you can sense, like, everyone's going to come out. You're going to have this great vibe. I mean, I thought it was awesome that they added portion control as well.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I mean, those guys, they were like there way back in the early days, early 80s. Like, I think probably around about the same time as DAF. Maybe DAF were a little bit earlier because they were late 70s. But yeah, it was great seeing those guys, you know, a different take on things as always with these. But yeah, Cold Waves did a really good job with that show, and then the one in LA that they did, that we played at, or there was a couple in LA. And yeah, it just feels really good, you know, to be back, and it's enjoyable. You know, you can tell obviously that it's not just the fact that I can't really do anything else. But I do have a degree, but I don't know how you.
You know, you always want to get to those other things, don't you? But as music industry will just hold you by the throat.
It really does, and just at that point where you're like, all right, we need to make a change, and then, you know, you do end up getting, in the most joyous way possible, getting sucked into it.
Yeah. What's the story on the return of David? I think that's great after such a long time that he's.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. What happened was that he had a little outfit that he was working on with Simon Granger, that did all the artwork. for Nitzer Ebb from the beginning. A thing called Stark. And Bon was, I mean, both of us were spending quite a lot of time in Europe. This is again before the pandemic. So Bon got to see him a couple of times, and he liked the kind of DJ vibe of what they were doing. And then obviously, because I've worked with Terence Fixner for a long time, I think we're coming up for our 20th anniversary, New Kids on the Block. And so Bon kind of was enamored with the idea of pulling us away a little bit from the kind of rock format and go more of an electronic, but still, you know, kind of modernizing it, but also making it more electronic as well. And the obvious thing is the kind of, you know, the way that EBM, hate these tags, but the way that EBM has kind of morphed into techno and one into the other, specifically in Europe, I think over here too. So bringing in some of those elements and keep it as a DJ set-ish, but still obviously a live performance. And so that's what we worked on, that as a kind of format. And obviously wanted Dave to be inputting on that. And then we brought him along on the road and still are. He's still coming along for the ride.
I don't know what you're using, but I was watching some of the gear shots, you know, on some of the set split shows. I don't know what he's using, but it looks like pretty high tech ability to mix the tracks in a way that like they just sound so good. Like,
yeah, I mean,
like refreshed. What's the deal?
Yeah, there's so David worked a lot on like revamping the parts. Bon always worked a lot on the sort of sound of those parts. And then live and actually in the studio, Bon likes to use Bitwig, and it's a very accessible instrument. Actually, I mean, essentially it's a studio and sequencer type vibe.
Yeah.
But live, if you get the right controllers and it's pretty much add on whatever you want, it can be really playable. And that's what Dave went for, and
that's awesome.
It's worked out really well. So it's kind of, I mean, it's sort of in a way that bands were, you know, things like Chemical Brothers back in the sort of 2000s when they were doing huge shows, and they would have like 96 input, you know, 48 channel desks on stage. It's that in a box.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing, of the same concept of like all of these channels, you can do an effects on each of the channels. A lot of stuff is like has been pre-programmed so that when you want to access it, it's there. It's not like you're searching around literally on a box to see what you're plugging in. But essentially it is, you know, the thing will play just a basic version, but once you've got someone in there, Dave or Bon, then it comes to life.
I really noticed it, and you know, I mean, you guys have like a minimalist sense of sound, kind of like, you know, I actually talked with Bon about the, you know, the building of the basics of this, like not too many parts built on, you know, drums and a great synth sequence. And, but the thing is to step up and have that sound like refreshed without changing anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, congratulations on that.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, we learned a lot in the early days working with Flood. And even before that, on a more pop level, when we worked with Phil Harding, who was doing like, you know, kind of like big hits with like Dead or Alive, and, you know, You Spin Me Round was a Phil Harding
for sure
magic number. But yeah, specifically with Flood, we would build things up to get the complete song, and then a big part of the process, just as big as writing in the beginning, was what can we take out and still have that energy is to make it still sound the same as the, you know, the vibe is still the same. So we enjoy working that way, and you know, there's something special about having so little coming out of the speakers, for us, for our sound, you know, our songs as well.
I mean, I can only imagine that when Hellfest came up and you guys were in the position to say, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And these guys had to tackle like the show with just, you know, I mean, I have to say they killed it. And partially it was because of that refreshed sound. And then Bond saying, well, fuck it, I'm going for this. This is the, we're not going to miss the moment. And it was amazing. Like I said to Bond, I sent him a text right after, man, that was impressive.
Yeah, I honestly, man, I was the same. I mean, you know, I was following everything back here in LA, and just would communicate before they went on stage, and I'd talk where it's possible after they came off stage. But it was always very much involvement from both our side and my side, and I felt the same way. They nailed it. I mean, and you know, these are things like Mera Luna, you know, like you're showing now. Those sort of festivals, it's still very much a guitar busy stage orientated setup. So to have such a simplistic look is challenging sometimes on a big stage, and with, you know, the tendency is to fit into what everyone else is doing. You know, you look at a little bit bare.
It's not a lot of electronic anymore. It's a lot more which gothic metal or something.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a big stage, but you pulled upon the wondrous Daniel Meyer.
I mean, man, that guy, I mean, he's just to have his positive energy, that smiling face around whenever. I mean, he's coming out with us in Front 242, and that was kind of like,
amazing.
Yeah, that was like a no-brainer for both bands. And like, oh yeah, of course we'll get Daniel to come out.
Real Gothics are disgusted. Again, another success story on this. And I absolutely loved it when David came out and sang. It was like if there was any in-ears going on there, they were blown out of the ear of the time that David started
singing. Someone got permanent hearing damage.
It was really great.
Yeah, I was actually, funny enough, I was trying to find. There's a friend of mine that is like, she's kind of inexperienced about playing many shows, and she was like really excited about playing Paradiso, as she should be.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, trying to think when we played there, it was a small festival, and it was Bad Brains, Nitzer Ebb, and like I can't remember who was on it, but a lot of Clinic and stuff but it like a really like mix. And so then I tried to find the exact date and everything of when we played there, and there happened to be, there was no video, but there was a live recording of Dave singing that same song, and it sounds exactly the same. He sounds the same, the song sounds the same. It sounds brilliant. Yeah, I'll send you a link to that.
What's that song from?
That's from Total Age.
Okay, so yeah, you're bringing a new edge.
yeah. Well, Bond did a little bit of reworking on it as well, kind of put in an extra bass, because the original of that was very minimal. That was just metal and drums.
It was very suitable though. The no war.
Yeah, actually, those are Dave's lyrics as well. I'll have you know. Yeah, he's one foray into lyric writing with Nitzer Ebb. He's still playing it on stage.
I must say it was really invaluable as a Nitzer Ebb fan to get corrected on what the correct pronunciation was. There was always a question: is it Nitzer Ebb or Nitzer Ebb? It's like obviously Nitzer Ebb.
We used to, when we first, like in the 80s, when we first came to the States, then everybody called it Nitzer Ebb, and we would correct them as Nitzer Ebb. And then after a while, we're like, you know what? So we like.
Say it out.
The funny thing was, and it still is sometimes when you're telling like someone, an old timer, like you stopped at a gas station or truck stop or whatever, and like, you guys in a band? Like, yes, we are. Anyone else should know? Probably not. What do you call Nitzer Ebb? Nitzer Ed? Nitzer Ed? That was the Beatles? Yeah.
Classic. It's so amazing. I mean, like even growing up in Canada, I remember even in my years of being in the dance club, still dancing to you guys, because you guys were huge in Canada, like right away.
It's the first place we played was the first place we played in North America was Montreal.
And Toronto, you guys were huge.
Yeah,
and like this club RPM, I'll always remember that you know, always when you guys came on, the dance floor was on fire, and it was just, and something my friend always told me was like, did you know these guys are actually quite young? You started off like, congratulations, it's your 40-year anniversary this year.
Thank you very much. We started, like, our first show was 1983. So we'd started the band in 82 and rehearsed for a year for the first gig. And so I was like, I think I was like 15 when we started the band, and still like 15, 16 when we played our first show.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but by the time, like, I think we had a record out by the time I was 17, and then signed to Mute at 19. So everything happened in our teenage years. We were on tour. We were touring the States, going out with proper tours, and we were still either just ending our teens or.
But what a way to, grow up. I mean, you grow up together. As you say, you spent more time with Bon than anybody, and you've seen the world and everything through this thing. I don't know, the whole scene. The thing that I really like is the idea that. Do you remember like what got you really into the scene as far as like? For me, when I first heard this album, the Some Bizarre album.
Oh yeah, loved it, man. Yeah, that was a big influence on us.
Game changing, right?
I mean, Mute in general was a big influence on us, and we're 4AD, but the bands that really, I mean, we were kind of, before there was goth, there was just music. It was just alternative music. There was no like demarcation between. It was like top 40 radio or alternative, and that was it. That was the only two. You had two options, and so the bands we were really listening to were Killing Joke, were a massive influence on it. Public Image Limited. Theater of Hate,
wow,
Susie and the Banshees, Neubauten.
Really?
Yeah, Liebach.
But you come before Neubauten.
Well, no, it's about the same time. We started.
Same time.
Yeah. We went to the first Neubauten live show. The band was already going, our band. And then they were opening for, I think it might have been Bauhaus at the Lyceum in London. And that was the first show they ever did in the UK. We saw Liebach at the first ever show they did in the UK. There's that, we actually still all laugh about it because, as those pictures show, we used to like to dress up in like black kind of paramilitary, authoritarian looking young men. We're actually like half of us are vegetarians, and we're very not, slightly antithesis of controlling anyone. But anyway, we like to look that way. So we went to the venue they were playing at, which was in West London, and we were actually quite shy. So we'd brought a bunch of flyers, and we didn't know how to like get access to talk to the band, talk to Live Up. So we just came up with this plan that would go force our way backstage, and it was a tiny little club. So we went backstage, kicked open that dressing room door, stood there, and then threw flyers at them, and then stormed out. When we eventually got to meet them properly, I think in Libiania, and they were cracking up because they were like, yeah, we were sitting backstage and we were excited. It's our first show in London. And then suddenly these guys come in looking like German military, and we were dressed up in Slovenian military. And we're like, yeah, kind of works. Everyone's.
How did you make your connection into Mute and like that actual scene?
Well, we'd in around '82, we released a demo tape that we sold called Basic Pain Procedure, and that demo tape we sent out to every label that we liked, and got absolutely nothing back from anybody. I think we got a nice letter back from Factory Records saying no thank you, but everyone else just ignored us, and including Mute. So then we went ahead and we started this label called Power Voice Communication with Phil Harding, the producer, and his business partner. And we released the first single from that was the Warsaw Ghetto. Then we released Let Your Body Learn. And when Daniel heard Let Your Body Learn, he actually called us to sign us.
Oh, nice. Right away.
We started, yeah.
It is a hit, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he took us on. And then at that time, Mute didn't have a deal, didn't have any offs, like Mute America didn't exist. So what they were doing with like Depeche and any other bigger bands, they were signing them through, like doing licensing deals through American labels, specifically Sire. Seymour Stein, had that point Ministry and Madonna, I think, whatever. But they were signing deals through American labels as a licensing deal, and we had this show in Montreal, like a one-off show for North America was Montreal. So we flew over, did the show.
Often happens.
Yeah,
yeah,
crazy back then. So this is like probably like 85 maybe, and then so Seymour came up to see us, and then they, when all the labels were still in New York, and it was like there was a bidding war basically that happened between Sire, Geffen Records, Michael Rosenblatt, whose father used to work for Seymour at Sire, but at this time he had gone over to Geffen Records, and then EMI, Manhattan. So basically, like there were three. I think there was another label. There were 3 or 4 labels that were really interested. Seymour came to see us up in Montreal. We did 2 shows. Michael Rosenblatt came and saw us, and then we came back to the UK and started getting these offers from all the different labels. And as far as I remember, Geffen wasn't necessarily the biggest like financial. I mean, anything above $1,000 for us was like big money. So, but they weren't the biggest financial bid on it, but they were adamant that they would follow suit with Mute and let us develop at our own pace, and just we led how we wanted to do the band. So that's how we got in to sign to Mute and then signed to Geffen in North America.
I was kind of interested in how a band decides what instruments they're going to use to define their sound when they start, and how they get their hands on them, and then how you inevitably, record them. And that actually becomes like what you are, and still, so what was the impetus for that?
Well, we didn't have, when we started the band, we didn't have a sequencer at all. So Bomb would play a little wasp, which is notoriously bad at picking up all the notes, and he'd play it by hand because we didn't have a sequencer. So we knew we had to get a sequencer, and we were saving up to get a Pro One because that was the only synth, and we liked the sequential circuit sound. Yeah, we'd just go spend. There was a music store in our town called Future Music, and we'd spend all Saturday, probably really upset the people that had money in there, but it was the same old, not record store, but like a music store where you go in and you're the little kids going in, and we didn't want any guitars. We were looking at like amps and keyboards, but sequencers and sounds, whatever. So we knew at that point we wanted a sequential circuits Pro One, and they were quite pricey for us. Bon and I were still in high school. And Dave had left school and was working for his father in construction. And then Roland came out with the 101, and it was like half the price of the Pro One. And so my parents, Bon and I were like saving, literally, I was saving my lunch money. I think Bon actually was working in his dad's greengrocers at that point. So I was saving, like, literally we weren't eating, or else we'd share like a, bag of chips, as in the English version of chips. Potato, yeah. So we saved up as much as we could, but we were still pretty short on getting the whole kit and caboodle. So my parents offered to buy me, and we weren't a particularly wealthy family whatsoever, but they offered to buy me for Christmas, birthday, and then however long they deemed that it was going to cost them for me to pay off in birthdays and Christmases. They got me an SH-101. So Bon and I stupidly thought, well, we've got enough money to buy two, but instead of doing that, we bought a Roland keyboard cube. Because we thought, well, we're going to need a speaker. Not, just weren't thinking, right? We could have had like another synth, but we didn't do that. Anyway, but that's how we started with that. And that was everything we did from the beginning was acoustic drums. And then...
Which I was amazed to hear.
Yeah, and then this SH-101, the Bomb would unplug the jack out, plug in the phones, put the phones on, write the sequence, listen to it once. If it was good, take out the phones, put in the jack, and then the song would start. And then sometimes he'd get it wrong, be like, and do it again.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that's how we started. And then once we signed record deals, we'd been in a few situation studios, and we wanted Oberheim expander, and we wanted
good choice.
Yeah, and then at that time there was the Akai S900 was the 1000 and 1100 were down the road. So we got an Akai S900, we got Oberheim expander, and probably like some kind of DX to help us along the way. And I think we got a rack mounted 7, which was a TX7 or whatever, which actually was a good little unit. It was like rack, and that was good. I actually had a lot of good fizz sounds. So we'd use that, the Yamaha stuff to be the front of the bass sounds. The Oberheim, and obviously still used the Roland as well, the SH-101, but the Oberheim would be the depth, and then the kind of roundness from the Roland, and the front from the Yamaha. And that was kind of our...
And your sequencer was coming from the SH-101?
We went to... was it Cubase at that point? I can't remember. I think it was not Cubase. I mean, that had come out yet. It was because Apple were really unreliable to do anything. So we used an Atari ST1040.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one. So I can't remember what sequence we were using. Was that Cubase at that point? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was probably Cubase or Steinberg Pro 24 could have been.
It was Steinberg Pro 24. So we saw that was what we got first of all. That was our first like setup.
Wow. That's so cool. First time I saw Steinberg Pro 24, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, wait, right. What is this? Yeah, had to know what it was. So that's really cool to know. It's also cool that you guys were listening to Theater of Hate and Susie and the Banshees and like really guitar oriented music, but yet you decide to go fully electronic with, at that time, synchronization was not so easy. And basically the idea of it was not as simple.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't simple, but we really liked the idea of not using guitars. I mean, we always say that we hated guitars just because we knew it would annoy journalists. But it was really it was a lot. Like Bon and myself were not really that interested in learning how to play a guitar. I mean, we could get a noise out of a guitar, but we didn't want to know how to play it, and it kind of interfered with the look that we had devised for the band, which was very much kind of, not to put too fine a point on it, but kind of based on DAF, Deutsche Amerikanische Freundschaft, this like really simplistic, minimalist look. And and there was obviously other bands doing a similar thing around the same time as us as well in the UK. But
what a proud place to wind up, though, is the home of all of the great things that were coming, and then you're involved in that. I kind of like romanticize that era a little bit, and I'm semi-nostalgic about that type of thing. What was the energy like around like the office when you knew that you were like with a group of people that were completely inspired by what you were doing?
It was amazing. Yeah, when we first started to mute, they were in this tiny little office that was on like 3 different floors in West London, or Soho, basically. And then they bought a building in kind of Kensal Rise, which is kind of Notting Hill, like West London. And so they were like redeveloping the building so that it could be it was like a 3-story building, and the ground floor was going to be all of their like sending out. Is like, kind of Dan was always ahead of the curve on things like this. Like he wanted to have a shop, and at that point a mail shop, then above that was the offices, and then on the top floor was the studios. And they used to have a studio near King's Cross called Worldwide, which we used to work at a lot. That's where you'd go in there and there'd be wire sitting around making stuff. You'd be in another part. It was kind of like really badly, like it's a huge room, and it would be like just like a little bit of soundproofing, and wire would be over there, we'd be over here. It's like
classic era.
Yeah, exactly. And then they built the studio in the top. And then so we'd spend a lot of time. We were the first band to go in the studio, and we were working on the second album, Belief, with Flood. We wrote it in that studio as well. Bon and I wrote it, and then did the recording there. So we were there for months, just kind of coming in and out. And it was like a home away from home. So you'd go in there and it'd be like Stephen Mallender would be wandering around because he was friends with everyone. And, Mick Harvey would be in there, Nick sometimes, and then Roland Howard, just people would just be around all the time. And it was a really good vibe. It was a really, you felt part of the family, I guess.
And I mean, you guys were also close. I mean, when did you guys sort of become friends with the Depeche Mode guys? You've been friends with them for.
Yeah, they'd as we were starting to, like, we'd signed for a while. Mute had moved to this new building on Harrow Road in West London, and they were about to release Music for the Masses. So Dan wanted us to tour with them, and we were a little bit reticent about the idea. We'd been doing Belief, but we were so we had Belief was coming out. So Dan was like, it's a really good kind of like, wake up, boys, this is the music industry. So you need to, like, at least think about how you're going to get to a big enough audience. And quite honestly, what we felt at that time, we'd loved Depeche in like the early days, and then we've kind of felt in our youthful angst that they were too pop for us, and the handful of fans that were following us would be so disgusted that they'd not follow us anymore. Rather than the bigger picture, which is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fans getting a chance, the Depeche fans getting a chance to see your band and maybe becoming your fan too. So anyway, we reluctantly acquiesced to go on this tour. And I think it was like the first night we, so we saw the whole show, and Bon and I were just like, I can't remember we watched it from the front of house or side of the stage, but there was this like very quickly there was this realization of like, that's how a show's done. And
Intimidating.
Yeah, the band were just so easy to get along with, similar kind of lifestyle growing up and very similar sense of humor. And so we got on really well straight from the beginning. And it was like going through that tour. In fact, we were supposed to go on the next tour, and Daniel didn't want us to go on to the US part of Music for the Masses because he wanted to get us back in the studio because things are rolling along quite nicely.
Shame.
So we wanted to get on to the US tour, which so we kind of superseded him, and we were supposed to go out, and US immigration turned down our permit. And someone's got it somewhere. I think our old manager, there's a piece of paper from US immigration saying that we lacked musical merit. to which me and Bon, we're always like, oh yeah, I mean, they're not wrong. We do. We put on a good show, but we do lack musical merit.
That's
not.
But
we weren't on it, but we were supposed to be on that whole like the 101 film and all that thing. We were supposed to be on all that crap, but as it turned out, carried on, did another album, and then went on the road ourselves.
I just always thought that you guys were friends from being young. I don't know why. That you and Dave Gahan seem to have like some sort of very sort of similar styles and sort of similar sort of fashion and stuff. It's very refined.
Yeah,
you always dress well, and you're always wearing a nice suit.
Yeah. The funny thing is about wearing a suit on tour, it does seem kind of counterintuitive, but I hate to say this, or do I hate to say this? I have a really good tailor in London, and he knows his fabric, obviously, and so the suit, the stuff he makes me is like, it's so hard wearing, and I don't wear it apart from going on stage, and that thing it works and works. So there is something like, I mean, if I could afford it, maybe I'd go around in the suit the whole time and wear it out. But it actually works really well for me from that point of view.
It suits you as well.
Thank you, sir.
But it's important to point out that you guys came from the skateboard scene, which we
did. Yeah.
This video is this like early?
Yeah, we were like we started skating in the 70s, and there happened to be a skate park, which is that skate park, ROM, that was near-ish where we lived. It was easy to get to. So we and a lot of other people would go and skate there. We built our own ramp where we lived. There's Bon. And yeah, we would just, it was a really big part of what we did, but we would go to show at this particular time. We were already going to a lot of shows, you know, the actual aforementioned bands that we'd go and see. So like, you know, Bauhaus, Birthday Party, Theatre of Hate, we'd have like our day clothes, which was skateboarding clothes, and then we'd go out at night as ourselves.
That's classic. That was the last thing I expected when Bon told me about it, that you guys had a skate history. And then of course it all made sense that I guess you orchestrated a visit one day where we went down and did a jam with Tony Hawk.
Yeah. I was
what a day that was.
There we are.
That was classic. No, I just, this is the last thing I expected. Quote of the day with Tony Hawk. He can show Kev a 540 and Kev can show him a 420. Oh yeah, we had a jam there that day live on Tony's radio show.
There we are.
Cyrus Rex, and Rodent, and everybody.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a really good day. Yeah, the reason we got in touch with Tony was, in fact, he got in touch with us, I believe, or maybe not. I don't know. We'd noticed that he'd written a couple of things, like, or in interviews, he'd mentioned us in like skate magazines. And Bill Silver, the promoter that used to be prominent in Southern California, he was doing the Depeche tour, and we were on the Violator tour. And so we went, I think we were playing San Diego, so we went to the Vision warehouse where they had the Vision ramp, and we're chatting to a few people like Mark Gator Legowski, and he was like, does Tony know you're here? Well, we haven't talked to him. He was like, man, he's a massive fan of you guys. So he got us in touch, and then Tony came. We were doing like some special show. I think it was at the Hollywood Bowl, I can't remember. And Tony came up to that with a few of these skate guys, and then we
never would have expected that. They were into you guys like way back. You guys were into them. Like, that's not even at the time when skateboarding was all that too popular yet, was it?
No, they were having, I mean, like Tony had definitely, like, you know, he'd gone from being on boxes of Frosties to just like, you know, I think he was driving his grandma's, it was a cool car. It was like Galaxy 500, but he was like, he inherited a Galaxy 500 from his grandma, and that was the car he was driving. But he still had the Fallbrook ramp, and it was, but yeah, it was a tough time that they had there. But that, I don't know. There's a lot of crossover between the whole kind of skate history and the history of the way that our style of music has gone, where it's come in and out of popularity, and you can, you know, the people that really care about it as the participants who are making it. We never stopped because we weren't making enough money. You know, we took breaks because we were losing our minds a little bit being around each other. but it was never, you know, a financial necessity that stopped us. And even if it was, we'd get a day job and carry on making music if that's what we wanted to do. And I think there's that similarity.
I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know if I've got this wrong, but I think I met you when you were working with Cyrus for the first time, and Cyrus Rex on your DJ M Rex project.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't sense any activity in the Nitzer Ebb world yet. And then I noticed Bon coming around, and he was in LA, and I started thinking, when you moved to LA and you moved out of the UK and you moved to a place that was totally different, did you still envision that world still following you and it being invigorated and it unfolding again?
Well, what actually the kind of the history of Bon and I reigniting the Nitzer Ebb flames was I'd been working with Terence Fixmer, and we were doing pretty well as Fixmer McCarthy, and we were touring quite a lot actually in the States, South America, and an awful lot in Europe, and doing really, really well, really enjoying ourselves. And our agent and a lot of clubs were, you know, promoters were predictably of like, wow, when's Nitzer Ebb can be coming around? At that point, there was no option of it whatsoever. So Bon was living in LA, but he was working in Chicago on a record with a friend of his. And I was playing there with Terence, and I just kind of reached out to him and said, do you want to get together for a drink? I don't think we'd actually spoken to each other for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So we met up in a bar, of course, and over a couple of pints, just talked about stuff. And I think he was intrigued, the interest that still sustained in you know, through me and Terence doing things, and we were doing a couple of Nitzer Ebb covers, and so we started to think about the possibility of doing some shows. And the booking agent that Terence and I had in Europe, Petty, he started to put the feelers out, and it, you know, started as a, you know, let's see how it goes. Like, let's do a few weeks and see how you guys feel and see what the reception is. And then 7 months later, we ended the tour, and we're like, well, I guess we should make another record then. And so I then relocated to LA from London, and we started making an album. And in between, as we were making out, I was still going out on the road with Terence, and then there was another tour with the Ebb, and it kind of just, you know, as these things do, took on a life of its own. And that's, yeah, I know you guys are familiar with this, that when people say to you, well, just do another album, it's like, well, if we do that, that's going to suck the life out of everything around it for 2 to 3 years. Like, that's like doing the album, going on tour again. You know, it's a real, it's not just like, oh yeah, just let's release something and do a few shows. It becomes this all-absorbing,
absolutely,
commitment, and it's hard. You know, it gets harder as you get older and you get more comfortable with your surroundings and, you know, your partner and your pets and whatever. You're just like, do I really do that? I think I'm all right.
And we're all isolated now too. We're not together in the room making the music.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Bon and I, he doesn't live too far away, so it's become you know, that isn't that difficult. But like with Terence, you know, he lives in Switzerland now, and I can't even remember the last time we've done anything in the studio together. Like, we do everything online. Like, I'll send vocals, I'll record them, send them. He sends back what he's done with them. It's all done that way.
The modern way.
It is. It's actually a good way. I mean, I've got no qualms with it, but it can get time consuming when you're using people the other side of the world.
And you know what's sad about that is that you don't end up learning, as you said earlier, from people like Phil Harding or Flood, or perhaps Alan Wilder, when you work with them, learning something that you might take into your own world and create your own version.
It's true. It's true. You're excluded from that process that people are using, and you know, and there's some great we're lucky enough to come through that era, and there was working with some great people, as you guys have as well. And, part of the drudgery at times of being in a studio every day, really long nights, getting up later and later, staying in the studio later and later, and you flipping your days in the end. It's that you sit there and you do learn. You can't help but learn. True. It's a really good point, Kev.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have cited Flood as being a major inspiration for technical approaches of recording, and I think that is an invaluable lesson to just sit with somebody like that and to just take in like what you're witnessing. And it probably all sinks in much later when we're young too. At that time,
yeah. I mean, we weren't even. I mean, we would make fun of everything and everyone. So we, thankfully were able to work with people that put up with our crap. But there's been people down over the course of time that have been fairly upset with our antics in the studio of not paying attention and not really caring, seeming to care. Obviously, we've always cared. But the good thing about, as you say, is like you're going into that experience every day. I mean, talk about what are those video things that you do, that people do, that it's like a vocational video that
vlog,
yeah. So you're getting that every day, and like there's stuff that we learn, like when Flood first did certain things, just like how reading tapes and reverbs, and we're just like, how did you do that?
Yeah, and you can ask the question too if you're like wondering, well, how did that happen? You'd be like, wait, how did you do that? And you can actually get an answer that is like coming from years of experience.
And the thing with Flood is that he actually started really young as well. He's like a super intelligent guy and could have gone to any university he wanted to go to, but he decided to leave school early because he knew he wanted to be a sound engineer. And he started working at Trident in London, which is a very famous studio, like massive albums were done there. And he started working there when he was 16, and he learned things that were from a different age. He learned from people that were started in the 50s and the 60s and were still working in the 80s. And so you get all of this overlap of processes of how to work.
Invaluable real world experiences.
Yeah.
So out of the takeaway between all these producers that you have worked with, is he sort of like the golden era? If you could go back to any time and work with another producer again, what would you choose if you could?
I mean, the thing is, you hear, without working with them, you hear lots of stories about people, and it's easy to think like Connie Plank would be awesome. Unless you're in the room, like you say, when you're in the room with someone. The thing with Flood was it gelled from the very beginning, and we've been in rooms with other big producers, and we're like, nah, not interested. So, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward choice, thinking about the options that you never had not known and the options that we did have. Flood is head and shoulders for many reasons, and
For that,
it's everything put into one person.
that's classic. I mean, I've always actually liked this image of you, Douglas, when you're with me. And you guys did the cover of the sensational Alex Harvey band.
Yeah, which oddly enough was when Flood first started working in Trident. He worked on as a tape op the last of the sensational Alex Harvey band's albums.
See, I knew it. I knew there had to be a connection there. That's awesome.
Having said that, Alan's amazing in the studio. Alan is like, he and I really, like, he got the best out of me every time we worked in the studio together.
I mean, that's what is he officially back in Depeche Mode now that Fletch has passed, or no, he's not. Yeah.
I think that I mean, Alan's always been his own man, whatever he does, to the point of, bloody mindedness, you know, in a lovable.
I loved meeting up with you for the first time. We got to hang out, and you were with Cyrus, and quite humbly, we were just like hanging out, and you did the Black Line stuff, and a great group of people there on that. I thought, like, boy, this is like a really creative time or era coming together. And I was thought, like, well, maybe. And then we did that wonderful little mini jaunt together.
That was great
with you guys, which was lots of fun. That's how I kind of like got to know you a little better, which was great to hang out and have fun. And I kind of thought that this era might have been like, yeah, look at that. I was thinking, is this like the sort of like reemergence of the golden era again?
There is something in that, I think. I mean, it's kind of interesting. There's newer people coming along that are influenced, but it's very I think it's very telling, a little bit like, you know, when we were talking about, you know, Tony Hawk and whatever, skaters they still skate. They've got no reason necessarily to skate other than that they love to do it. And I think you know, for our generation, there's a lot of us that have just like, well, it ain't broke.
Yeah.
I'm happy doing it. If we weren't happy doing it, I assure you we wouldn't be doing it, because Bon and I spent 10 years not doing Nitzer Ebb because we needed a break. And I recommend that to anyone.
Are you completely invigorated again now?
Yeah.
Kind of seems like you are. So I trust. Well, hold on. Shall I ask? Are you working on a new album?
the hoary old question. We are.
Oh, that's awesome. But
we are. It's something down. Yeah, we're trying to figure out the logistics of doing it. We have another project that we started. Yet another side projects. But they're fun. Side projects are fun because the pressure is off. But it's called Drag, which we did. We've actually already recorded quite a few songs for that.
Excellent.
So we've got that coming out, but we do have some plans definitely for this year for new Nitzer Ebb.
That's great.
In terms of how it's delivered, whether it's a whole album immediately or whether it's, you know, steps towards a new album, we're not quite sure yet. But there will definitely be some new material at some point this year.
That's awesome. Is David Goodday on it?
He will be helping out as and when is the need of it. But, you know, Bon and I have always kind of been, you know,
the masters.
The core of the writing is us, and it, you know, and that's one thing that whoever we've worked with, Flood, Alan Wilder, everyone is like, you know, no one's tried to take that and reconfigure it, because it does work.
Absolutely.
You know, it's that kind of non-communication or non-verbal communication that happens when you've worked creatively with someone for decades.
And maybe since Bon's got his Lemon Tree outlet, that basically that's like, he's just so creative, man.
Yeah.
You got to have these outlets, release all this stuff to be pure back into exactly what it is that you guys are killing it at, and you're back killing it again. Is it going to be on Pylon Records again still?
No, I think we're gonna, if anything, we're gonna self-release everything from now on. It just seems like we've got people that we can rely on around us. And, you know, I mean, and the fact that Searchai and Cyrus have the pressing plant that they're putting together here in LA. It'd be interesting to be much more hands-on with that. I mean, we've always been involved with that, but to actually have something on your doorstep that you can, everyone, and it's kind of exciting to do it all ourselves, actually.
That is too exciting to be, to put words to, I especially when some of our friends are the impetus for making that happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I agree. Some of favorite Recoil tracks are with Douglas on vocals. A comment there. I've got some questions here, if that's okay, from
let's do that.
from the audience, and see what they have to say. Jens Horland Christensen, although you were both electronic band and frequently played on my stereo, your style of music is different. What did you think of each other's music and live performances back then? Did SP and Nitzer Ebb meet? No, we didn't meet until it's 9 years since we did that tour. Can you believe it?
Yeah, geez.
Come on. This is crazy. Of course, I love Nitzer Ebb. As I said, I was on the dance floor.
Definitely.
Killing it. I don't know if you guys had ever heard of Skinny Puppy, but...
Oh, yeah. No, Puppy were like definitely prominent in the UK at pretty much the same time they were everywhere else,
Jason Boris, perhaps this is a better question for Bon Harris, but perhaps Douglas would have an answer. I'm super curious how they remade the synth parts for the current updates live set. Was that the Bitwig answer?
Well, there is to a certain extent, but also Mute have all of the original masters of the albums, so we double that stuff, and then like some of the parts for System 700, which actually Daniel Miller had a System 700, and then Flood got his own System 700, and there was obviously like ARP 2600.
Wait, I get it now. I get it. That you use the System 700 sequencer.
Yeah, we used that.
Okay, I get it now. I get it.
From Showtime onwards.
Oh man, that's what that sound is. It's that sound of the System 700 sequencer. It's the way that it's the way that it moves. It has like a particular feel, much like...
Well, it's an instrument that you're playing, because that little movement, that feathering of one of the pots changes everything.
It is absolutely. Oh, wow. I'm glad that we got that question. Thank you, Jason, for that.
Yeah.
Sick Grove, influences vocally and musically in general? Just had to ask, being that you're one of the strongest, most prominent voices of the genre.
Whoa! Thank you. I mean, I grew up listening to a variety of different stuff. I really loved rock and roll. Like 50s rock and roll growing up. And my dad was a huge Frank Sinatra fan, so there was always Frank Sinatra playing. So I'd sing Frank Sinatra just because that was around. Then, like, the Birthday Party came along. Obviously, Bowie, Iggy from the 70s era. Those, they kind of, I guess, just because of the range that I've got, you tend to go for the vocalists that have a similar range because it's easy to sing. So those go. I mean, it's a pretty wide range, thankfully. But those, and even like I say, I really was a massive fan of Susan Eventually. So some female vocalists as well in there, sure.
Have you ever met Susie?
Yeah, a few times.
How is that?
That's awesome. She's a character. Well, I tell you, the first time I met her, I think I was 14 years old.
Wow, that must have been awesome.
Yeah, they were doing the Juju tour. I think it was 1980, so I would have been 14. And my friend and I went to the show, and his mom was picking us up from the theater that they are playing at. So we were waiting in the back of the theater, like a couple of young kids. And then the back door opened, and presumably it's their tour manager came. He's like, "All right, you can come in now." And we're like, us, and then like, yeah, you can come in now if you want. And we're like, yeah, all right. So we went in, and there was the band sitting on the front seats of the theater in front of the stage, and we met them all. And I got them to sign some stuff. And then years later, we did played a festival, and they Susie and actually all of them had mentioned us, and we knew they liked us. Anyway, we did this festival and had a brilliant time with them. And I, during the festival, also we were all staying in the same hotel. And I told them that story of meeting them. It was brilliant. And then Steve, I used to see Steve Severin around quite a lot in London because Susie had moved down to France. She's still down there. But yeah, lovely people.
That's great that eventually, you meet them and eventually they end up liking you and saying they like your music. And what was really cool about Susie is that she was like onto like the industrial scene, like fully into that.
Yeah. There's even some
She's at Throbbing Gristle shows and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And she was, you could hear it creeping in as well, like the electronic creeping into the Banshee sound as well. I mean, there's certain tracks, Red Light is really like that. It's the drum machine and a bass in. It's brilliant.
I have a prediction that what happened with Kate Bush is going to happen with Susie, where of course Susie's legendary to us, but to the masses, it's just going to take that one Stranger Things episode, absolutely. And that will be it. I mean, they tried last season.
Talking about, like that Juju album is just got
it's like it's Beatles quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it can't be undone.
And the thing is, it's like the mastery of like the guitars on it. It's like very simple bass part, very simple. Everything is like super simple, but the way that they sound, like you say, it's got to be production.
And Steve Severin is a sweetheart. He's like a sweet guy. It's like
he's a very funny guy.
It's great when they're funny. Yeah.
Yeah, he's I think it was when we first played that festival with them, and I can't remember why someone said something about money, and he was like, "Stevie won't have any. She thinks she's the queen. She never carries money."
Yeah, that's it. His humor.
Probably
only met him once. I also love that. We had a mutual friend in Jen.
Yeah.
And what a soul to miss. I know you were involved more so. You helped him with Hazel, your wife, produce Bite of the Twin. Did you ever go to Africa?
Yeah, twice. I was doing camera and sound.
Oh wow!
On both those shoots, and basically kind of co-producing it with Hazel. It was amazing. It was intense, as you can imagine.
And it was at that time when it was just there was some big scare about a particular Ebola or something strain that was.
It was Ebola. I think the second time was when it was really bad. The first time when we went with Jen, the only thing we were really worried about is someone lopping off her head for a goal. But they loved it. They absolutely loved it. They totally understood the androgynous concept, and she was. Yeah, it was. I mean, as the film shows, they accepted her completely as one of their own. We were just actually talking about it because it's going to be, we want to go back as a kind of like, even though it doesn't really, in our world, it means something, but we wanted to go back because it takes a lot of preparation to do something like that, but we wanted to go back for like a 10-year anniversary, which will be in 2 years' time.
God, already?
Yeah, I know, right?
Wow. I mean, I've always thought that Africa is like one of those things that I always consider to be the most challenging of travels. I gather you can back that up.
It is. I mean, I've been to India a few times, and Hazel's been to Nepal with Jen. But but Africa is when you're really in the back of beyond, you're really in the back of beyond, and you're very reliant on who you are as a human being, connecting with other people's humanness. It really is down to that. There's no, no one's going to get you out of a situation.
Yeah.
You have to just be aware and be very, very, put your faith in humanity.
I think I encourage people to go check out Bite of the Twin. It's really cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's see the more questions. Exciting live chat and perspective from Sebastian. Flood and Alan Wilder produced Nitzer Ebb albums. What was the difference between the two? Are you always in touch with him, Alan?
Yeah. Still have. I mean, used to see him quite a lot when I still lived in the UK. But we've done shows together. But yeah, a lot of texting, mainly about ridiculous things like football. Soccer, sorry.
Of course.
Yeah. But
the important things.
Yeah, we're in touch a lot. The difference is, well, I mean, there was the one album that we worked together with both Alan and Flood was Ebbhead, and they, Alan is a classically trained musician, has an encyclopedic knowledge of music in terms of like alternative music and interesting. That he's got his own process, way of working, as does Flood. But Flood and Alan had worked because we first worked with Flood on Belief, and then Flood worked on a Violator album with Depeche, because actually we were doing in the same studio that we were making Belief. They came in and did the 101 soundtrack for the movie. So they got to see how Flood worked, and I think that inspired them, certainly made Alan interested, all of them. So they had a built-in kind of working relationship before, but we wanted to have both aspects of the musicianship of Alan, and then the more engineer brain of Flood. So I guess those are the differences, but they do complement each other perfectly.
Man, mega team.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Serge asks, long Nitzer Ebb fan here since that total age. Three questions for you, Douglas. Why is there no Nitzer Ebb live albums? The songs mixing sounds I won't say so much better. It does sound killer in the concerts.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Serge. Because there is, we have something up our sleeve.
There you go.
This year.
Any more Terrence Fixmer or Black Line?
Terrence and I, it's the 20th. Next year is the 20th anniversary of the first single we released called Destroy. So we've done a kind of reworking of that, and we do have a multiple amount of songs that we haven't released yet that we've played live. We've got some live shows coming up in Europe. Black Line, it's kind of because of the amount of people involved. That was always a toughie to get everybody in the same room at the same time. And then the main component, as I think you alluded to, Kevin, our dear friend Cyrus, he's very busy. So in a way, that's kind of how the thing that Bon and I are doing with another person that was involved actually with Black Line in parts, another LA electronic musician, Brad, and so we're finishing up putting together like an EP for that.
What's that called?
Drag, DRAG.
Nice.
Yeah,
we'll look out for that. We've got lots of things coming. Speaking of not Droid, Droid Harmony. Hi to Douglas, and thanks for all the amazing music. Just wondering about touring in North America with Depeche Mode in 1990. How did you adapt to playing such huge venues? And what is your most interesting story from that tour? If you can encapsulate.
Yeah, I don't think I can actually tell the most interesting stories. But we'd already played the Music for the Masses tour, like we said, that had kind of like tuned us in on how to play bigger venues. And then we also, the album for that 1992, the Nitzer Ebb album for that was Showtime. And we deliberately written things that could be kind of performed in a much kind of more bombastic, bigger way. And we definitely took it into account that we wanted to play bigger venues and be able to hold our own during those kind of environments.
Interesting. The next question here. Sorry to bombard you, Douglas.
No, not at all.
Douglas, I've only ever seen your band live while you were sick, and your bandmate killed it at the show by stepping up. My bud Curse opened that show. Would you consider doing another Nitzer Ebb tour and rolling through Austin again so he may have the full experience?
Yeah, we certainly have that on the list of a US tour.
It seems like you guys are just ripe and ready from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in a good place, physically and mentally to get out.
That was so good to hear, Douglas, because I was like, everyone worries when we're told like, oh wait, he's been taken sick and is like not able to do the things that you want to do, and that's got to be frustrating to be sitting there knowing that
really
you got to get well.
Yeah, and it's a good impetus to have to make you really concentrate. It focuses your concentration in a very, very succinct way. That when none of us are getting any younger, that's for sure. But I know that we've still got a lot of time left in us. So to get ill is a real eye opener of what you're missing if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of good times to be had.
Yeah.
Why don't Oscar Ramirez asks, why don't we hear Big Hit live?
Again, we're starting to include more songs from that album. It was a difficult time for us. I mean, it was pretty much that album and the subsequent tour was great. Sales on the album were terrible. Reception to the album was mixed, to say the very least, and then it led into a difficult time, or the beginnings of a difficult time for both Bon and I individually and together. So it's taken a while, psychologically, to get that back to a point. But we had a nice little sit down the other day listening through tracks, and there were a few, this is for upcoming shows over the course of this year, including January. So that's definitely on the cards, more and more of those.
Awesome. That's a good question then. Joe Virus. Douglas, did you hear the COVID parody of Let Your Body Learn that I made with my friend Shock?
I think I vaguely remember it. It was a pretty crazy time, but I do.
I think I heard it too, Joe. I think it was pretty good. I think it got around.
It did.
Will Callender asks, hey, Douglas, you guys killed it at Cold Waves LA this year. What's your favorite song to play live and why?
That's a toughie.
If you can't decide, pick one of your favorites. Also hoping to get fun to be back into the sets at some point in the future, whatever that means. Hoping to get fun to be back at.
All right. So favorite song, I guess. I mean, I love doing Lightning Man, but then again, joining the chant, you can't beat it. Let Your Body Learn, just the stompers. Stompy.
One thing I noticed about like the recent gigs is how many killer songs you guys have. You'll be like it's a string of your whole set is like a string of of hits. It's great. Holger Rumkey, hey, Douglas and Kevin, it may be a bit personal. Hey, I haven't read these before. I'm reading them to you, by the way. It may be a bit personal. Sorry, it's necessary for me to tell you, but you were the parts of my life who gave me a lot of confidence in times where it was most needed growing up. Took so much fear of the darkness, literally, and the fear away from me. It still do. Therefore, a big thank you. Please pass it on. My question for Douglas, maybe an old antidote. Is it true that a manager did mistakenly book you for a right-wing diplomatic said gig once? And how did you see the gig in the Dorian Gray at Frankfurt, Germany? I was in the club, but couldn't get in the overcrowded room. What's he talking about?
We actually, I don't know about the right-wing.
The right-wing gig.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But the Dorian Gray was actually done. So Dorian Gray was this club in the park, in part of the airport in Frankfurt.
I was there.
They moved the we were playing live, and they moved it from the club to one of the floors of the parking lot. So it was this huge. I mean, it was definitely. If anyone wanted to storm the stage, they could. Like I think within the first minute of the set starting, all of the crowd barriers folded, but everyone was, as they normally are at all of our gigs, and yours too. People look after each other. There's no real, if someone's going down, they pick them up, and there was no need. But it was a great memory. We literally that morning. Well, yeah, I think it was early that morning. We were in the studio all night the night before, finishing the last track on something or other with Flood, and we had car came to get us to take us to the airport at like 4 a.m. And we were like unplugging gear and putting it in flight cases, and jumped in the car, went, had a few hours sleep, and did the gig. That
was an amazing club. I was there in 1988 with Sven Vath. Sven Vath.
Sven always used to come down and take everyone back to his studio.
Yeah. and the sound they had in that was just tuned so well. I think probably at that time it was probably the height of and they called it the Techno Club. And at that point was really really quite definitive. That's great to hear you guys had a part of that. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I don't know if that. They're about diplomatic. I don't know. I think I got one more question for you, Douglas. Sure. Let's see what it is. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. Hold on. Douglas, if you were up in a Starbucks at the moment, what is your beverage of choice? My coffee I make at home. Yeah, same. Are you a coffee man? Yeah, I drink less of it just because it's not good for me. But I have, I wake up to a coffee, that's for sure. Yeah. Oh, same. There's nothing like it. Yeah, I make a coffee in the morning, and then depending on how much sleep I've got the night before, I'll have another coffee. But I tend to, as the day goes on, then I'll go into herbal teas and just kind of mellow out. And then when I was younger, then I'd drink espressos all day. Like last thing I did before I went to bed, I'd drink an espresso, go to bed and sleep like a log. I can do that too. It's weird. I just don't get affected by it. But the coffee thing it's more of I have a stomach ulcer, so. Oh yeah, you got to be careful. If I have too much of it, the acidicness, but I mean, I love going to Italy. Oh, is that the place? Oh man, the coffee there is great. I'm deprived. I've only ever been to Italy one time for one show, and we were in and out like that. But I just feel like I need to spend time there. Goes to the coffee and food is amazing. Coffee and food alone. Yeah. Did you guys ever play Japan? Yeah. What did you think of that? Loved it. Yeah, we played Tokyo a couple of times. Love it there. Yeah, Tokyo. Hazel, my wife, her
her stepbrother was living there for a long while. So I went with Terrence Fixner. We had a show out there, and
Awesome.
ended up staying, for an extra week, and then staying for another, like in the hotel, and then stayed with her brother, which was interesting, just being in kind of like a domicile situation. I've only ever, like for the most part, you go on tour, you see the inside of hotel rooms, but I love it there. Really
Yeah, I
do.
love it too. Also the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat it. Lastly, but not leastly, it was great. I said to you earlier when we were hooking up this chat that we're going to need a picture for Simon. And you said, yeah, okay. And you sent it to Simon Granger, the guy.
Yeah,
I guess he's done your art for quite some time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, since the very beginning, yeah.
And so we ended up with two Simons getting two. I really got to thank Simon Granger for bringing the poster up. It's kind of an honor to have. He's an old school Nitzer Ebb, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was there from when we first started. We used to there was a record store called Parrot Records that we'd go in. He's a little bit older than us, so we would go in there pretty much every day we could, and he'd always seem to be in there as well, and we'd kind of shout abuse at him from the other side. I mean, it was a tiny record store as well, but we basically noticed that we're all, thumbing through the same vinyl, and and it was the old school. I guess it's now what people do as well. But you put the record. There was a Martin Jeffries, this guy that owned a record store. We had a record player up front, and then we'd put it on the turntable. So then he started introducing us to. He's like, well, if you like that, you'll probably like this. He's a big audiophile. He's got an insane stereo setup. Like, he doesn't have a living room. He has.
I love those places.
It is a living room, but there's nothing soft furnishings about it. It's all like soundproofing, and it's just this huge Wi-Fi. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Not Wi-Fi, hi-fi.
Well, big up to Simon Granger for that.
Yeah,
and big up to Simon Paul as well.
Thanks, Simon Paul.
Simon Paul always pulling through with us, killer images as well, right in line.
Great.
Fully approved by Simon Granger too. So I guess
I know. There you go.
Definitely in the right thing. But Douglas, thank you so much for spending so much time with me today. I think I've got through all the questions I had about where you're at and seeing you. You look great. I wish you all the success with your dates and your releases. Keep us informed, and I'll let people know.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you, and I'm glad we could share it with the peoples.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in person again. And until then, all the best to you, sir.
All right, man. Take it easy. Have a good
Take care.